You know what sucks? Having a game you were looking forward to, maybe for years on end, get canned. There have been countless upon countless video games that have been cancelled in these past several decades. You have your Mega Man Legends 3, you have your Scalebounds, you have your School Shooter North American Tour 2012. I would say Star Fox 2, but we kinda did get that finally, like 2 decades later. Thanks. But the point is, seeing unimaginable amounts of work go to complete waste and whatever worthless hype came out of it get dissuaded, well, sucks. Now, of course, there could be a variety of reasons as to why the game in question got cancelled. Perhaps the scope of the project was too large, or there were conflicts going on in the background during development, or maybe the head of the development team acted like an infant and got pissy about some dumb social media shit, cancelling the game outright with no warning. But rarely does a game get cancelled merely because of a hypothetical controversy. And lo and behold, that's exactly how today's game met its fate. So come gather here, children, and let me tell ye a story of ambition, brutality, provocation, and dumbass capitalists mucking things up yet again. Witness, in all its glory, the tale of the ill-fated Thrill Kill. Thrill Kill is a 3D fighting game that was being developed for the PlayStation back in the late 90s by Paradox Development, a company founded by the quite prolific Christine Sue, whom created it from almost nothing and originally only housed her and 5 others. The company, along with their publisher Virgin Interactive, decided to make their first major title one that would compete with all those violent fighting games cropping up at the time. One of the more unique factors of the game was that up to 4 players could go all out against each other simultaneously, which would have been a first for the fighting genre, even beating Power Stone to the punch. Something they wanted to emphasize more, however, was that the game was, as Sue and company put it, a full-blown adult fighting game. Which even then sounded kind of vague and homogenous, but what do I know about marketing? However, once people actually got a good look at the game, it was clear to see what Paradox meant by adult. Specifically, edgy AF. The plot in Thrill Kill goes as follows. 10 people have been damned to hell for a variety of sins and crimes they committed in the living world, but one fateful day, the apparent ruler of hell, Maruka, became bored of the usual hell shenanigans and decided to pit these 10 souls against each other in hand-to-hand combat, with the victor being prized reincarnation so that they can wreak havoc on the living world once again. These 10 characters are manifestations of whatever disturbing and nefarious deeds they did before they met their inevitable demise, and looking at these guys, it seemed Paradox wanted to go just completely bonkers right out of the gate. These are some fucked up people, but out of all of them, the highlights include a librarian turned dominatrix that killed her husband and his mistress, then committed suicide by electrocuting herself with a cattle prod while she took a bath. Okay. A sadistic veteran judge who acquitted felons only to torture and murder them himself. Okay. A small boy who built himself stilts so nobody could look down on him, but died from an infection he got by amputating his legs in order to fit these stilts. A circus contortionist who murdered someone trying to do very bad things to her, and later accidentally snapped her spinal cord in 2. And finally, conjoined twins who, well, really, they didn't do anything but exist. Which, yeah, fuck those guys, am I right? In all honesty, these characters are very silly, and their CG introductions certainly don't help matters. But the overtly dark approach to them was almost unlike anything else in the era of ultra-violent fighting games, when up to that point the best thing someone could think of was a Scotsman who shot fire out of his nads. The game also had an interesting fighting system. Your goal is to destroy your opponent with your available arsenal of punches, kicks, and special moves, which is how 99% of all fighting games go, but unlike its peers, in Thrill Kill, you don't have health meters. Instead, you have something the game calls a kill meter. Anytime you make a hit on your opponent, your kill meter rises, and when that meter gets completely filled up, you can then attempt to grab the opponent, and then the fun really begins. From there, you can choose to finish off the opponent with a quick fatality, which all characters have by default, or you can choose to finish them off with a character-specific fatality, all unique and all exceedingly brutal. There are also the titularly named Thrill Kills, where you essentially beat the ever-loving shit out of your opponent until they explode. And finally, you make them dance. And that's it. No frills, no gimmicks, they just dance. Oh, the dominatrix lady does the Macarena for anyone not sick of that nearly 20 years later. Ooh. Now, I don't know about any of you all, but I think it's safe to establish that Thrill Kill is incredibly violent. In fact, the game was considered so violent, the always reliable ESRB gave it its first ever AO rating, specifically for said violence. Before then, the AO rating was only used for games with very sexually explicit content, games like Rihanna Rouge, Lula, The Sexy Empire, or The Joy of Sex. Despite this, people were pretty much nothing but excited for Thrill Kill, and there really wasn't any outrage over its release for much of its development. Things were looking quite bright for Paradox. Then it got fucking cancelled. If you recall, Virgin Interactive was publishing this game, and that company, while a very successful one in their own right, got thrown around back and forth all through the 90s by a bunch of other game companies due to the ever-changing landscape of the video game market. Around the time of Thrill Kill's planned release in late 1998, the US branch of Virgin Interactive had been acquired by none other than Electronic Arts, which they got as a result of acquiring the Command & Conquer folks over at Westwood Studios, whom Virgin had been heavily related to. Due to Thrill Kill's notoriety, EA were already very familiar with it and its concepts. And within a few weeks of acquiring Virgin, they fucking canned the game just before it came out. Now, as with many of EA's decisions, Thrill Kill's cancellation was, questionable. I mean, you would think cancelling a game with an unbelievable amount of hype and potential profit would be the last thing these greedy shit-faced hacks would do. Perhaps this was just an awkward phase right before they fully morphed into that role. Regardless, in a press statement trying to justify this decision, they explained that they didn't want to harm their image by publishing a senselessly violent video game. Which I suppose is fair by itself, but then they said under no circumstances would they allow the game to market, going as far as to outright refuse to sell the game to any other publisher and effectively shelving it for life. Now, it's one thing when you merely cancel a game that may harm your image, but attempting to keep it completely out of the public's reach is just ridiculous. It's not like Thrill Kill was the video game equivalent of Pandora's Box, and this was right before certain events started putting violent video games into an even more scrutinous corner, so I highly doubt it would have made a huge splash in controversy if it did get released. And at the end of the day, despite what the developers say and how violent the game actually is, it's still just a stupid fighting game. Hell, I'd argue the game's finishing moves aren't much worse than what Mortal Kombat 4 was cranking out the previous year. But what's done is done, and now it seems Paradox would have to drastically change course. Luckily, these developers were pretty resourceful. Instead of sitting on their asses wondering what to do next, probably what I would have done, they briskly moved away from Thrill Kill and started work on their true debut. See, Thrill Kill's fighting engine was built entirely from the ground up, so with a new direction and a new publisher, which thankfully didn't kick them in the dick this time, Paradox went and released WuTang Clan Style for the PlayStation, just over a year after Thrill Kill's unfortunate demise. This game was a lot similar to what Thrill Kill originally was, a 3D fighting game that could have up to 4 players beating the shit out of each other, but in addition to the whole hell concept being removed, the game was now based around the motherfucking WuTang Clan. You know, Wu-Tang, ODB, Raekwon, several classic albums, that one project they made where they only made one copy and sold it for like $2 million or something, and was bought by an IRL douchey troll. In other changes, the kill meter aspect was removed, and now it's just your old regular health meters and lives, which is a shame because that was a pretty interesting aspect of the original. Sure, you could just call it a reverse health meter, but it was different, it was a cool idea. Besides that though, the game is pretty much what Thrill Kill was going for, especially when it came to the finishing moves, which if you look at some of them are pretty much on the same level. I guess that means the publishers were indifferent to that stuff, unlike those idiots at egotistical anuses. Curiously though, you have to insert a code into the game to actually see the gore, kinda like what the Mortal Kombat port for the Sega Genesis did, so maybe someone on the publishing was concerned about the violence, or maybe the spirit of WuTang Clan decreed it be placed there as a curse for messing with their funky flow. I don't know, Halloween's close by, I had to think of something spooky. From there, Paradox would go on to make a nice library of games across the next console generation, including X-Men Mutant Academy, Backyard Wrestling, and the sequels for both of those games, and then they were bought out by Midway in 2004 and rebranded as Midway Studios LA, where they went on to develop more games, including a spin-off of the Mortal Kombat series, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, which was highly touted as the only spin-off of the franchise that wasn't a load of shit. Unfortunately, they would eventually crumble, along with the rest of Midway, in 2000, and most of the development staff subsequently moved over to High Moon Studios, which isn't that well regarded, but hey, at least these guys still have jobs. As for Ms. Christine Sue, in addition to leading all of the above, later founded 2 more independent studios, and as for EA, well, they're EA, I don't need to tell you how they're doing because they do that themselves. Speaking of which, for those of you fearing Thrill Kill has been lost forever, there is a bit of a happy ending to this story. Considering that Thrill Kill was essentially completed before it got shafted, some employees over at Paradox gracefully leaked the full game onto the internet for all to enjoy a short while after its apparent death. I mean, how else do you think this footage exists? Anyway, you can check the game out for yourself in all its magnificently macabre glory, as the ROM can be found in various places across the internet. From what I can tell, it hasn't aged particularly well, but hey, if you're looking for more of this game, may as well go to the source. So what can we take away from Thrill Kill's Cancellation? Well, if anything, this whole fiasco offers an interesting perspective in video game development during the late 90s, especially with EA and their increasingly rash decision-making, and the attitude of making games as controversial as possible so that PR gets boosted and hopefully bags of cash magically appear at your doorstep as a result. Also, there's the more blunt, don't cancel your game just because you think it might piss some people off. For the most part though, this is just another tale of game development and stupid publishers that will surely be remembered fondly for many generations to come. Now, if only 6 Days in Fallujah could acquire that same notoriety so that game can find its way into the public eventually too. I will never forgive you, Konami. Thanks for watching my doodles, and now time for a little explanation for anyone who cares. So if you're a regular viewer, you're probably wondering throughout this video, even what in God's name is this? Didn't you already do a video on Thrill Kill? And yeah, I did. And it sucks. It was quickly written and rushed out, by my standards at least, and I don't think I did the game and its long history justice. So about a year and a half after that piece of shit had been put out, good old Larry Bundy Jr., yes, that one, hits me up in the DMs to go, "Hey you, patriotic twat, you wanna write a video for me? Fuck you." He didn't actually say that, I'm just joshing him. Of course, I said yes, and I wrote a couple scripts for some potential videos for his channel, but long story short, it never really came into fruition. Don't worry, there wasn't a falling out or anything, I still love that band and his stuff. But anyway, one of the scripts I had written for him was a massive redo of that Thrill Kill episode. So to prevent another long ass delay between videos, I decided to take that script, brush it up a little bit, and make that redo my own. And that's pretty much it. So you can check out the original video if you can bear it, or this other video as well where I talk about rape in video games. Variety is quite nice, isn't it? Again, thanks for watching fellas, stay tuned for more videos if you're interested, and as always, I'll catch you guys later.